guys, it's me, Emi Morris, and I'm here to talk to you about some relationship advice. This is my newest and latest blog. You can check out more of my blog entries on www.emimorris.com to see some more tips and encouragement and inspiration. So let's dive right on in. Tonight I'm going to be talking about relationship advice, how to deal with conflict. And that was just sparked by having a couple of conversations over the weekend. And I felt like, you know what? This person could not be possibly the only person going through this. We all go through conflict with our spouse. You know, for myself, I'm married. We're actually expecting our first child. So no, this is not my gut. I'm 8 months pregnant. Anyway, but yes, whether you're in a marriage, whether you're in a dating relationship, whether you just got, you know, that homegirl or that homeboy, you have that relationship. We all have relationships. We're human. So we could all use this information to apply it. So I got 5 points, and I'm going to make it quick. Okay. So the first point is this. When you're dealing with conflict in a relationship, don't assume the worst first. Let me say that one more time. When you're in a relationship, try not to assume, jump to conclusions and assume the very worst first. Okay? Give that person time to, you know, explain what's going on with them. Give them time to tell you what's really going on. So, perfect example. I know when I was dating, if me and my husband were, if he would tell me, I'm going to call you at 8, and 2 hours pass, he calls me at 10. I mean, those 2 hours are murder. You know what I'm saying, ladies? Yes. It's like, what could he be doing? What's going on? Is he dead? Is he alive? Is he talking to somebody else? Oh no. Then it goes to he is trying to disrespect me. Oh my God, you know, and the list goes on and on and on. But then once 10 o'clock comes and he does get available to call me, I may find out it had nothing to do with those other thoughts that I had running through my mind. Now, what I would suggest to do in times when you're upset, instead of jumping to conclusions and assuming first, once you do hear the story from the other person's side, you can tell them, hey, listen, okay, I'm glad it's not what I thought it was, but this is how that made me feel. Do you know what I had to go through for those 2 hours? I was worried about you. I didn't know if you were dead or alive. You could have been on the side of the street somewhere. So next time, if you tell me you're going to call me at 8, call me at 8 or text me. Send me some type of message so that I'm not thinking that, number 1, something happened to you. Number 2, that you're trying to purposely disrespect me. Or number 3, you're trying to play games. So on both ends, now you didn't jump to conclusions and jump down that person's throat. But now, you know, you were able to also express what you were going through because your feelings are valid, what you're going through. Number 2, communicate. Stop believing that the other person is a freaking mind reader. They're not. We can't read minds. So that means basically you got to communicate in your relationships. I think one of the best things that I try to practice in my relationship is communication. I cannot assume that you think like I think. First of all, men and women are both different. On top of being a man and being a woman, we also have personalities that God gave us. So therefore, my personality and who I am is different from his personality and who he is. For instance, money, for an example. Let's take money. Everybody's relationship with money is different. Okay? Some people use money as a sign to, you know, to show love. Some people it's security. So for the person who shows love, they may spend a whole lot more and not even think about creating a budget. The other person, on the other hand, may say, well, security, I don't want to spend all of my money because I want to make sure that we have a roof over our head. Neither's wrong in a sense, but they're both different. So when it comes to building a relationship, you've got to learn that he's not going to automatically think about money or think about bills or think about things that you may think of the exact same way. So that's why you must communicate. One of the most common things I hear women say is, well, I shouldn't have to tell him that, or it's common sense. Well, no, common sense isn't necessarily common practice, and what's common sense to you may not be common sense to me. So it's not fair to say, well, communication shouldn't have to happen in order for him to understand where I'm coming from, or for her to understand where I'm coming from. That's not true. So dispel that myth, communicate. You got to. It's different, or else you're never going to get on the same page. Communication is about, I may think of this thing like that, and you may think of it like that, but what's the common ground? Let's meet in the middle. And you can only do that by communicating. Number 3, be careful. No, be vulnerable. Excuse me, I was about to jump the gun. Be vulnerable. Put your pride to the side and be vulnerable. That's one of the biggest things in relationships that ruin marriages, that ruin courtships, and even relationships. We're afraid to just simply say, that hurt my feelings. Because we don't want to experience rejection. We don't want to experience people saying, oh, you're soft or you're sensitive. And so we prefer to not have to explain ourselves. So being vulnerable, we don't want to we feel like that's giving someone else power or control over us. Well, I don't want him to know that how I really feel. Or I don't really want her to know how I really feel, because then she'll feel like, if they know how much they mean to me, then maybe they could use that as an advantage. Well, sorry to break the news to you. If he married you, I think you might want to go ahead and admit that you're in love with them. I mean, I know certain people like that. They don't want to say I love you first, or they don't want to say you hurt my feelings. So instead they'll walk around and give that person the silent treatment, or instead they'll wait for that other person to say that I love you first, or to show affection first, to do all these different things because they're so afraid to be vulnerable. And you can't live like that in a relationship. If you can't be vulnerable with the other person, then point blank period, you don't need to be with them. Or if you can't be vulnerable in a relationship, if it's already too late and you already got married, then you just need to deal with the fact that you're going to have sucky communication and no intimacy, because you cannot be intimate with another person without being vulnerable. And vulnerable is simply taking off all of the layers that we put on top of ourselves to protect ourselves. Vulnerability is removing all of those layers, all of the walls, all of the guards, and saying, this is what's really going on. For example, if your dude is not the romantic type, and honestly, a lot of guys naturally are not necessarily romantic. They have to be taught that, right? But as women, we want them to automatically be romantic. But here's another thing again that goes back to communication. What's romantic to one woman may not be romantic to the next woman, and vice versa. So you got to communicate. You got to share with your partner, this is what romance looks like to me. I prefer for you to bring me flowers. But what happens if he's bringing you flowers and you don't like flowers? So talk to him. Say, hey, this is what turns me on. This is what gets me in the mood. This is what makes me feel like I'm appreciated. You've got to communicate, because people are not mind readers. So getting back to the example of being vulnerable. If you want your partner to be more romantic with you or whatever, and you're not really feeling love, you're not really feeling appreciated, being vulnerable says, you know what, honey? For the past few weeks now, I've been feeling like da 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 da. Don't attack that person. Don't come out with a pitchfork at them, but just letting them know, hey, how I really feel is, I know that you love me, because I'm not going to assume the worst. Obviously, you love me, because we wouldn't be married or we wouldn't be in this relationship. So I'm not going to assume the worst. So I'm going to hope the best that you do love me. And now I'm going to communicate with you. And I'm going to be vulnerable in that communication and tell you, honey, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like a woman, and it makes me feel loved when you pick up something from the store just because and bring it to me, and it's not my birthday and it's not a holiday or a special occasion, when you just do random acts of kindness for me, that's romantic, and that makes me feel like I'm on your mind throughout the day. That's being vulnerable. Some of us would say, I shouldn't have to tell him that. But we complain to our friends and to everybody else, and we like, my husband don't do this, or my fiance doesn't do that, or my boyfriend, he don't do this and he don't do that. You know what? Forget it, I'm cool. Well, that's your stupid fault, because all you have to do is communicate and be vulnerable and stop acting like you're so big and bad that he should be a freaking mind reader. And yes, I said stupid, because ladies, sometimes we just you know that face I'm giving you. Sometimes we go on a mind trip and we could have saved the money because it was an unnecessary journey that we take. So anyway, fellas, thank me later. Fourth point. Got 5 points, I'm almost done. Fourth point. Be careful who you go to for advice. Now, is that hard? No, it's very simple. Be careful who you go to for advice. Make sure the person that you're going to for advice, number one, has a decent relationship themselves. Number two, really is your friend and really wants to see you happy, because everybody don't want to see you happy. Yeah, that's right. Everybody don't want to see you happy. Everybody doesn't want to see you gallivanting around with your new boo and you're happy and you're in love. And so some people are happy to receive negativity about what's going on with you. So therefore, if you talk to them about your situation, they're definitely not going to give you good advice. They're going to be, they're the main ones to be, I wouldn't take this and I wouldn't take that, and girl, yeah, and dude, yeah, man, I wouldn't take that if she was my girl. I wouldn't be doing that, blah, blah. You know, those guys who stand around the wall and tell them, man, if I was still single, I'd try to hit that and do blah, blah. Why are you going to Ray Ray, who has 5 baby mamas and 6 kids, okay? And you're going to him for advice about your engagement and your fiance or your wife. Why? Why would you go to Ray Ray? He ain't got nothing to tell you. I'm gonna tell you exactly what he's gonna. Ray Ray gonna tell you, man, I wouldn't take that, man. That's why I got all these different women out here, because you know what I'm saying, these chicks be tripping, and so I like to have my options open. Well, you listen to Ray Ray if you want to, and that'll get you divorced, or that'll get you your engagement broke off, or to get you paying a whole lot of child support and running from the law because you can't pay for it. It's cheaper to keep her. Hello. The same thing for us, ladies. Why keep on talking to Renisha about your situation when she can't even keep Daquan, you know, satisfied? She gonna take, girl, yeah, because I wouldn't do this now, but, and they be the main ones trying to make sure that they don't lose their man, but to tell you real quick what they're gonna do. So my thing is, find someone who is a godly woman or a godly man who exhibits in their own relationship, or if they're single, in their own life, that they sincerely love you, and number two, that they are not people who thrive off of drama and that are going to egg you on. Talk to someone who's non-biased as well. Don't talk to the person that you know is automatically going to take your side. Talk to someone that's non-biased, who's straight up and down, and they're going to tell it like it is. You know, yeah, you might be my friend, but you tripping, or you going too deep on that. It's not that serious. Or if you are right, and they will side with you because you're right, but you don't want someone who's going to pick sides just because of who you are to them, because that will cripple you and make you literally never grow. So sometimes real friends tell you the hard truth that you don't want to hear. And then the last point, check yourself. That was good, because my last point was that a good friend will tell you stuff that you don't want to hear. Well, the next point is, tell yourself the things that you really don't want to hear. You got to be real with yourself and check yourself. How are you contributing to the stress of your own relationship? Because it does take 2 to tango. You are not perfect. Okay? It takes 2 to tango. So if you're not communicating, you're refusing to be vulnerable, you're always jumping to conclusions and assuming the worst, and you're being prideful and being stubborn, and you're never willing to be flexible, then what you expect? There's gonna be chaos and calamity and distress in your relationship. And you can't keep always pointing the fingers at everybody else. And this is not just in marriages, not just in romantic relationships, but in any relationship. If you and your homegirl are having a problem, or you and your mom, or you and your siblings, or a coworker, check yourself too. Say, how am I contributing to this? And if you do see yourself, then you need to humble yourself and say, you know what? Well, maybe if I hadn't have said that extra thing, then they wouldn't have responded like that. So maybe I do need to step back. That's humility. That is vulnerability. And the truth is, at the end of the day, as I close, when you're dealing with conflict, you have to realize that the enemy thrives off of drama in your life. Okay? And as a Christian, as a spiritual person, as a spiritually connected person to God, you have to realize that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against principalities and darkness, rulers of dark places. You're not dealing with just a person. The enemy literally thrives when there is distress or chaos going on in your life. So he wants you to be at odds with your spouse. He wants you to be at odds with your siblings or your best friend. So therefore, you have to step back and say, you know what? Excuse me. You know what, Lord, help me to check myself. What am I doing? How am I contributing to it? How do I be a seeker of peace? Let me say that again. Be a seeker of peace. And at the end of the day, when it comes to relationships and when it comes to how to deal with chaos or how to deal with trouble and, conflict, I heard a minister say this. They said, being right is lonely. Being right is not all that it's cracked up to be either. Do you want to be right and by yourself and alone because you want to be perfect and you believe that? Because here's the point. You can be right, but if you're saying it and delivering it wrong, you're still wrong. Yeah. So at the end of the day, being right is not all that it's cracked up to be. And we know a lot of those people. We know a lot of women that are still alone. We know a lot of men that are still alone. We know a whole lot of people who don't have any friends because they always are super defensive and it's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's problem because they can never see themselves. Be a pursuer of peace. Sometimes being a pursuer of peace means, you know what? I'm not even going to argue about it. I'll walk away. Let's revisit it later. My husband and I have a thing where if I know or if he knows that we're really, really heated in the moment, we say we need a timeout. And it's not like we're going to sweep it under the rug because I don't believe in suppressing issues because it only makes it worse over time. But if you need to take like a 10-minute or a 20-minute break and then revisit it, do that. Take a moment, step away, and try to decompress. Because when you're really, really angry and upset, you're going to say a lot of things that you will regret later. So, being a pursuer of peace at the end of the day is the most important thing. You want to pursue peace. So, number one, don't assume the worst first. Number two, communicate and stop believing that people are mind readers because they're not. Number three, be vulnerable. Share what's really going on. Don't be afraid to say I love you first because you're afraid of rejection. If you're afraid of rejection, you're never going to get anywhere because that's life. Take a risk. Number four, be careful who you tell your problems to and be careful who you ask for advice. And number five, make sure that you're checking yourself. So, as always, peace and blessings. I'm Emi Morris Clanton, and you can visit my website, www.emimorris.com, for more tips in detail that's actually written out on the actual blog on the website. And also, check out my music page, too. Sayonara.